Is that dance Doom? Was that from?
He was doing
It looked
the.
exactly like the dance from
No,
Dragon Ball
Yeah.
Z.
that's
Oh,
he's
no.
dabbing. He's dabbing.
I know what you're
right?
talking. Yeah, Davin.
Yeah.
Wait, are you talking about the
Yeah.
Great Saiyaman?
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah,
you
I
were
know what
like-
you're talking
The
about.
thing
though.
that almost
They ended
ended
like
Dragon
that,
Ball
and then
Z?
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Oh. I thought you were doing like maybe like the Ginyu Force.
The
sort of
fusion dance is also
Yeah,
similar to that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
deal.
No, I know what you're
Okay.
talking about, but no, I was Davin.
Oh,
Oh, it's
for those
something
of
like
you
that.
not watching the
we
live
we
stream.
gotta like figure out like a dance or like a poses that we can do on stream like that, you know?
There we go. The way
You have to
it'll line
combine
up. And
all 4 of the wards into one dance.
Right?
there we go. I like that. So we all need our ward pose.
Oh my god, and we need to be way more flamboyant.
Yes.
We'll work that
Hey,
out.
welcome. Yeah.
Welcome to the show, guys.
Yeah.
One little bit
Hey.
of news
Hello.
here this week. PAX is going to be going on, PAX East. So we're going to be sending lots of our bros out that way. Both
Not as many as we wanted to.
But it was thanks to all your guys' generosity helping out with the network here to send everyone there. So if you're down there this weekend, you can check them out.
It has nothing to do with you, the listener. It's due to other circumstances, but we love you guys. Thank you for your support. And if you're in Boston, please go see all the fuckers who are there.
Yeah.
And Ice Mitch. If you see Mitchell,
Oh,
cereal
God,
box
the poor
turner,
guy has
ice
gone
him.
through enough. How many did he drink that night? Was it
that
like
night,
in excess
I
of
know,
10?
yeah, he drank like so many, he had to run to the store and get another 6-pack. So.
That's. I feel like there's a certain type of poisoning that you can get from drinking too many of those things. Not like alcohol poisoning, not like going into a diabetic coma or some shit. Like something like specific to drinking
Like you
that much
just-
ices.
Like you just turn into a bro instantly.
There starts to be like this protuberance coming from the back of your head.
Just
and the
become
more
hella
that you-
PC.
Yeah, and the more that you drink, it just turns into like a full brimmed hat coming out of your head on the back.
I heard if you drink too many ices, you get Frailure disease.
See, and what happens with Frailure disease? Can you tell us about that a little bit?
You start like becoming an archer and that wears very skimpy clothing despite very, very, very cold weather.
Hey, I
That's-
love Ash. Don't talk shit about Ash.
Yeah, but I
Her-
don't want to
her
see
whole
Mitch
model is
dressed like Ash.
Too fucking stupid.
Oh.
It's like every
Yeah,
single
they-
time she was with her mom, she's like, Ash, it's cold outside. Wear a coat. Fuck you, mom. I'm
Well,
the princess of
I'm the
Freljord.
Frost Queen, bitch.
They just talked about this on the T-Force proper, actually, when they had,
Yeah.
literally, when they were talking about the design on Tarek, they talked about it with, God, who do they have on the show? TB Skyen. They had Skyen on the show, and he was talking about how Ash's design and a lot of the old champions' designs just make no fucking sense.
And now
Ash being one
get
of the
this.
prime
Doom
offenders,
is
so.
telling you about somebody who said something on another podcast that you might have already listened to because it's already in our network.
And if
So
you haven't,
it's a
then go listen
podcast
to it, 'cause it's
about a podcast talking about another podcast.
podcastception.
Damn it.
Podcast.
So
So what?
Just wanted to-
Other news going on this weekend. Earth is back. Sound the vuvuzelas.
what is your
Fucking
real
hater.
quick? What's your favorite champ to play in Earth?
Wukong.
They actually
Still.
enable.
Wukong is legit in Earth.
Wukong is legit in Earth because you keep Eing and then you just clone every other second and just keep hitting S and clone. You just alternate between S and W and they never know where the hell you are until you're on their face.
God, my favorite thing to do, like last year, I played a shit ton of Evelyn in Earth, and I literally made like a macro just to keep spamming Q. Just because like, you could do it every 0.2 seconds, and there was no way I was just gonna go sit there and like be like over and fucking over again. But that shit
Just
was
use your-
crazy.
Use your fap hand.
Earth.
Well, that's my
Urgot.
mouse hand. I can't
Is
like.
it
Oh,
Urgot.
Going left.
Yes,
Urgot's a bitch.
Urgot.
Urgot's fun. AP
It's-
Pantheon, just man drop all day.
So many people, like,
His is broken in
nobody
Earth
played
as well.
Urgot, and then Earth came out and was like, holy crap, he's an
Yeah.
Urgot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun shit.
I
Karma was
think
annoying as fuck.
I've been watching videos of people while I was on the PvE, and it seems like really the worst Earth champ would be Yasuo. So
I thought Rumble had a lot of problems on Earth as well.
Yeah, because he just like, I think
he
I don't
keeps
know-
overheating
Yeah,
because he keeps
Right.
overheating.
I
You're
remember the
you're continually silenced.
the last couple times they did it, like Rise was just busted to all hell on Earth.
and Sona
Yeah, and
Mhm.
Sona. And
So-
Karthus.
and Earth.
But I mean, that's part of why like they're and I like that they're doing the rotating game queue mode because it's only going to be around for a weekend, so you don't have to really worry about like there'll be champs that are busted, but it's not going to be around for like a whole week. So like they're not going to sit there and have to balance it and shit. So I like this rotating game queue mode. So I kudos to Riot. I really like this.
Don't get angry about a champion in Earth. It's supposed to be busted.
Exactly. Just ban
Yeah.
it
Just play it, have fun.
Yeah.
or play and have fun.
Have fun.
Yeah. I guess we'll just kind of mention our little trinket tip this week, which is, and I guess from now on these will just be little tidbits of knowledge. So like, and this one would be, don't be afraid to buy a pink ward, even if you already have one on the map.
Yeah, this is a really big one because I think a lot of times I see a lot of players who are like, think the whole entire purpose of a pink ward is like, I want to be the person that has most time spent on a particular pink on the map. Like, if my pink lasts for 20 minutes, it's officially the best pink ward in the game. And like, that's really not how League of Legends works. And these things only cost 75 gold. So like, if there is a more optimal place to have vision and denial of vision, like, it doesn't always make sense that like that pink ward that's way on your side of the map to just like leave it out and not buy pinks.
I just realized
Did-
what I can do to keep my poster on my wall relevant, guys. I have a poster
What?
like on this side of my wall, like back from season 3. It's tired of getting ganked, then try out a ward. Only 75 gold per unit available in the Rift Shop. So I feel like if I paint over the green part on top of the ward to pink, it can still apply.
Yes.
Because I
Yes,
felt like such
yes.
a fucking loser
Yeah.
having that up there. I'm like, oh, that was
Wait,
a long
so-
time ago.
Uh-oh.
Weren't they more of a purpley color before?
I don't. No, they were always pretty pink.
They were
They were
always
always.
pink.
I always thought they were a little bit purple,
Dark
like
pink, yeah.
purple rain,
God,
purple
dude,
rain.
no.
Unintentionally. Oh my god.
That was the stuff you were doing before the podcast was so much better, and you used that one.
Yeah, I
That
know.
was no, Doom. Take it back. You can do better.
I will dad pun it
Oh,
up.
he
Don't
can't take
worry.
it back. It's already done.
Yeah, if you want to make our
fuck,
listeners sad,
let's
about
move
that,
on.
You better
God
have
damn
a better
it.
fucking pun.
Well, I didn't run into a good chance to use Urfel Rain, which is what I was doing before.
Yeah, no, you missed that one. That
You
trans.
can't force it, dog.
Right.
I know. All
Rest
right,
in peace,
well,
Prince.
Let's talk about stuff here this week.
Yeah.
let's talk about some shit. So, how about them? How about them new classes and subclasses?
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, literally doesn't fucking matter at all.
No.
But
But so if you go to the league site, leagueoflegends.com, they had in the game updates and gameplay, they had a dev blog about classes and subclasses. So everyone knows about like the classes, you have your tanks, your fighters, your mages, and blah blah blah. So they kind of created these new sorts of classes and subclasses to kind of give newer players a better idea and give people overall a better idea of like how a champ is usually played or like what to expect out of them. So, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I also want to say that they spell out like just because they have these classes, like some of them don't fit only one category, and some of them they said if they have a really distinct play style, they basically just gave up on like actually classifying them, like Singed.
Yeah. Yeah, some champs are kind of in their own niche, but can be played as like different ways. I don't know. It's kind of weird. So the classes they came up with are tanks, fighters, slayers, mages, controllers, and marksmen. So those are like the classes.
Fairly similar to the ones in places already. The only ones they really changed were support.
Yeah, slayers,
And
slayers, and
Slayers.
heroes.
That's true. What did they used to be before?
Yeah.
Where they were assassins. So they
Lost
changed
the
the name.
It was just assassins was a
Yeah.
class instead of it being slayers. So all right, so let's kind of start at tanks. So there's two subclasses they have, which are vanguards and wardens.
Yeah.
I fucking hate the names personally, but I kind of like the ideas of the
It makes
subclasses.
sense.
So a Vanguard is the examples they used were Leona and Malphite, who like to dive in or offensive tanks, and then they used Wardens as sort of like defensive, like a Shen or a Braum, who might play more of a peeling role in a lot of cases.
I mean, I would agree with those subclasses, and like it kind of makes sense. Like me personally, I know that basically every tank I play would be a Vanguard because I dive on people a lot. But and yeah, I kind of like that idea. I mean, I guess besides like Malphite and Leona, you could say like you could probably call. I mean, I don't know. Maokai kind of falls into a Vanguard and a Warden.
And that's
Yeah.
this is exactly
Consider
where
him a warden.
I have an issue. Like
Yeah.
I think
Consider him a warden because he's a defensive type of character.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
he
his-
has
You can just,
a
like,
knock
jump
up
the fuck
slow
on
and a
people.
root.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's always going to be a gray area. But like, even when I look at the example they used Leona. Like, Leona is really good at peeling. Like, she's very good at playing a warden as well. So it's kind
But I
of
don't think that's the
Yeah.
point of these subclasses. It's not to tell you how to play. It's to give you an idea of what they like really benefit at doing.
Right, but I
For
mean, like,
example, I mean, she is very good at diving and getting into a team. Like that's just what Leona's very good at. Like it's also what Malphite is very good at. Shen doesn't. I mean, he can get into a team, but it's not as easy for him to get into the center of a team as it is for someone like Leona or Malphite. And that's
That's a
kind of
good
the
point.
point.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
and once they're in the middle, what do? Well, Leona has a W and then applies her passive to everybody around her, while also stunning and Zenith blading a whole bunch of people. Maokai's very similar. What does Shen do when he gets into the middle of a team fight? He fucking taunts people. Like there's a specific difference between the categories, the subclasses. I don't know. I kind of like them.
I guess.
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
just
like I think for
the point being like that, not everyone definitively fits into one role.
Yeah.
yeah,
But again, I don't think that's the point, though. It's supposed to be just an overlying kind of like this is the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
I'll
the
be in-
character idea.
To be fair, they did say that like people they'll probably list multiple roles within each champion.
Yeah, I'll be interested once they actually like list the subclasses on every champion and see like what their take on people's playstyle would be. But I think for like newer champions or people who are like looking to pick up a champion or even like have to face a champ that they may not face that often, just so they can kind of get a general idea of how they're going to play it. I think this is a good start. I mean, you generally know playing against a Malphite that a Malphite is going to look for any chance he can to ult in and fuck up your team. So it's
But like, even if you're going against like a Malphite for the first time, you wouldn't know that he's like a Vanguard already.
right
That's
because
only for the sorting sort of system.
yeah,
So it really
and
doesn't feel like
honestly,
anyone
he
like
is
going
very
against him,
yeah, he is very passive for the most part until he hits 6, or team fights. Period.
I think it's.
So.
I go back to what Doom said earlier. Like, I don't really know if like names like Wardens and Vanguard are really gonna catch on in League. Like, people will say offense, defense.
Yeah, like I've always
I
Yeah.
think that's unfair. I mean, specifically because we've just been playing for a while, and maybe we're callous to the idea of things being changed, like
Well, to be fair,
names.
That's
But
true.
like,
people have
That's
brought
true.
on marksman. Like
Juggernaut.
people have legitimately taken on the marksman idea and the name marksman.
It took a very long time for that
It
to
doesn't
happen.
matter.
Yeah.
It happened,
but
and it will happen
makes,
again. Like League
Mark-
is
Yeah,
a
like-
stubborn community for sure, but
Yeah.
I think like the best new definition that was added to the roles was like Juggernaut back when that
I
class
agree.
was like first introduced.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I was-
Because like right
I
away,
like
like people were definitely there's a difference between those champions.
And like so we'll kind of move on to like that. So there's fighters and they're split into juggernauts and divers, which I kind of agree
Yeah.
with. So like juggernauts would be like a Darius, a Garen,
Well, let's like focus less on like the
Spartan
actual
or
champions
Nasus.
and more of just like the class itself, what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
could
no, we
just
just
name
wanna
the
kinda
ones
do.
they
Yeah,
show.
Right,
It's
but
about
I
what
feel
they
we're
do.
just gonna like bog down like in saying, oh, maybe they don't fit in that shit.
No,
Yeah, I mean-
I think it's helpful to name the two that they mentioned just as a reference point. Like
because
you
they
know,
are pretty good reference points.
they mention so Juggernauts. They mention Darius and Nasus. They generally run at people, and then they have Vi and Xin as divers.
Yeah, like a juggernaut is going to want to have an extended engagement with you, and they want to kind of like take over a lane and snowball a lane and turn into kind of like this force that just kind of walks into the middle of everything and starts like fucking up anything that gets close to them.
They're that class of mix of perfect damage and defense. Basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they're tanky enough. They can't close a gap very well,
Right.
but they're tanky enough to take those shots to the face as they move into position to screw things up. So
Juggernauts was a really probably one of my favorite titles they added, like you mentioned before, because like
makes
it
sense.
really conveys. Once they're on top of you, they're some of the scariest champions in the entire game.
well, I don't understand why Warden and Vanguard don't make sense then. Because like Vanguard is typically the front line and Warden is a protector. So how are those
That-
like
you
not
know, that is a
like
really
pretty
good
spot
point.
on as well?
That is a really
I
good
think
point.
it's
Matt.
again, it's a comprehension that I think people are just they just want to ignore it. They just want to be like, I don't want these new changes or new names and classes.
Well, I mean,
But, like, over
some of
time,
it
people
feels
begin to
almost
adapt them.
unnecessary. Like I don't know what's actually getting.
Why though? There's over 120 champions, and we
Right,
can't
but who
just
cares what
classify
they're
them into
classified
6
as?
different.
Because if you're a newer
I like
player,
them. I like them a
If
lot.
you're
I think
newer,
Yeah,
that
if
they're
you're a
really
newer
good.
right,
player or
but
something
you're
like
not
that,
the
it's
ones-
nice.
You're not in the majority here that like really decides what they're going to be called going forward, unless like there's a good amount of people are saying like.
I don't
yeah,
think
no, this
that's the
makes sense.
point. I don't think that's necessarily the point.
No, it's
Like,
not
Right.
the
I mean,
point,
what
but
they're
it-
called sure kind of does matter so long as it makes sense. But the whole point is for players to understand what that means. And it's very straightforward when you say a juggernaut or a warden. You know that it's a very like straightforward. Okay, that character's a juggernaut.
I want to
He
interject
hits it, he
here
does damage.
Yeah.
because I think that this is good to go back to what Riot actually says in their point about why they made this list. They gave 3 reasons, and I think that they're on point with this. They say the 3 reasons why they kind of came up with this class and subclass structure is that the first is to shape healthy, clear strengths and weaknesses across champion subclasses. 2, within individual subclasses, enhance the strategic depth of the game by giving impact to champion choice beyond just personal preference. And 3, to create a shared vocabulary, which kind of ties into what we were talking about before. So, you know, you can see how these kind of tie together where somebody might recognize that, you know, they play this type of champion or like, and they have these general strengths and weaknesses.
And it's kind of easier to use those phrases rather than to you know, start trying to say, so someone's like, oh shit, so like how does you know, we'll just kind of go back to their examples. How does a Malphite play? And you know, rather than you saying, well, they're like an offensive tank, like they get really tanky and then, you know, they're gonna look to engage a lot and stuff like that, you can just say, well, they're a Vanguard. You know, and as long as they, you know, understand this idea of, you know, the classes, which just by looking at, you know, the champions, you know, they'll be listed as such. you'll have a general
Right.
idea of what
But
they're
I mean,
gonna
like,
do. They're gonna try to fuck you up.
there
So
has to be like an ample opportunity for those sort of that new vocabulary to really work its way into the game versus like if you're in a game, you're either just gonna call them by like their base, what they're called, like tank, or by their champion name, probably more likely. No one's
yeah,
really gonna call them like, don't get away from the Vanguard, get away from the
I
Warden and stuff. You're
okay,
not
well
gonna ever say that
sure.
in game.
Sure, but and that's probably true, but I don't think it's necessarily meant for that specific reason. I think this is more for champion select. And this is more for like, hey, we need to get a diver. Like we don't have any initiate.
I would love it if like this vocabulary really did come in during champion select and people understood it.
Well, that's what I think it's
Right.
used. I think
just
that's
don't
what it's supposed to be
know
for.
how well it's going to be adapted, you know?
Well, again, I think it's a callousness to the idea of change because we've been around so long. I think it will get. I think Marksman and Juggernaut are two great examples of terminology
Talk
that
about
finally,
Marksman later,
eventually,
this
did catch on.
classification
And I
shit.
think that if Riot just does it and they just do it, like the community will get they'll get the clue and be like,
If they put
okay.
it in the client, eventually people will get the reference, and I think you're right, Asterishan. But I think we should move on to the next one, which is another one of the names that I think is a bit harder to swallow at first, which is so we went through
Divers.
tanks, we went through fighters. Now they
we didn't
have
talk about
slayers.
Divers.
Well,
Yeah.
divers are straightforward.
yeah, divers are straightforward. They
Out of
put
anything,
Vi and
they-
Xin Zhao.
Yeah, they really existed pretty much in the vernacular of League already.
Yeah.
There's certain champs you just know they're gonna dive you any chance they get. So.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can move on. So
Okay.
the slayers, they break down to assassins and skirmishers. The assassins, the examples they gave were Zed and Fizz, and skirmishers, they gave the example of Yasuo and Fiora. Now, let's talk about assassins first. Assassins they view as, people that are super mobile, and they're very good at executing their targets. That's kind of what they mean for that type of slayer.
Yeah, Zed. I mean, you got Zed and Fizz is who they have in there. I mean, it's very true. They're very mobile. They're gonna find points to pick you. They're worried about their approach, and they're going to be clever and get in and out. Makes sense. That's what they do.
They're very reliable at getting in there. Like they usually have a way to get onto a target and do a bunch of burst damage reliably.
Yeah. And then next would be like skirmishers, so they talk about that, and it's like Yasuo and Fiora are the ones they give, and I would agree with that. Like Fiora and Yasuo are champs that they're not just gonna straight up just two-shot your ass, but if they get into an engagement with you and you start going toe to toe with them, they're just gonna womp on your ass. Like that's their job. They just want to keep going in, and keep weighing on you. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's more reliable. Like Fizz and Zed have untargetability and like can get to a particular champion in a fairly reliable way. Whereas Fiora, like, she's still pretty dang mobile, but like she can't like get onto the back line as reliably as someone like Fizz.
Yeah, and she's not gonna two-shot someone the way an assassin is, and also with a versus a diver, Fiora is not able to like tank hits once she dives in. She's got to go in and for a fight. She's going into like in a 1v1 situation. She's going in and going in and going in. A diver is like, hey, I'm gonna dive on you and start this fight. Like, let's go in a team fight situation. So we'll go mages now real quick, and sorry if this is preachy at all. So like burst mages, Lux and Vi, they're gonna I mean, Azure should take it away. Take it away. Why would Lux be a burst mage?
I mean, pretty much anybody that can 100 to 0 is going to be tossed into this category, and I mean, Lux is no exception. So if you can blow a load and kill somebody using magic damage, then you're in this category. Lux
Good choice
is
of words.
a good example.
I've always kind of. So I think the mage breakdown is the
Yeah, see, Doom
the
gets
most. I think the mage breakdown's the most interesting
And it's the one that needed to happen the most, honestly.
types of avenues. And I think even Lux, for example, is one of those ones that's a bit tricky. Like, yes, she's got a burst combo, but she's also one of the longest range champions in the game. So it's interesting how, like, she's not an artillery mage because she generally does a lot of stuff like via combos, but at the same time, like, she can poke you pretty damn hard, especially in lane.
Yeah, but like a burst mage is someone who has like a set combo. You know, they're gonna do their rotation, and at the end of that rotation, you should be dead. You know, whereas like
blow the load.
Going to an artillery mage like Ziggs or Xerath, they're just gonna. Oh, sorry. What?
I was just it's you have to wear on them rather than kill them in a heartbeat.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have a set combo. They're just going to keep throwing out those Qs until you're like until you're like a quarter health, and then they're just, they may have like a combo at that point, but they're not going to just, burst you 100 to 0. Yeah, they're going to keep.
Yeah, that's fair.
Keep poking,
someone like Veigar is somebody who's going to like look for an insta kill on a priority target, much like an assassin, just won't be as fast. And then with someone like Ziggs is going to poke down the enemy team, maybe siege, and you can see how that difference there is. I agree with that distinction.
Quick side note, did you guys read the mid-season mage update? What do you think about Ziggs'
goodness. Ziggs just just outright destroys turrets. What the hell?
When it's under 25%, like that's insane.
That's 25% for rank 1.
It
scales up to 35%.
So literally, that's 500 damage on tier 1 towers.
Yeah,
just for free.
True damage.
When we started this show way back when, I was a Ziggs man. I would have loved to hear that news.
Right.
I mean, this is
you may end up being a Ziggs main again after that change. I mean, how awesome is that? Seriously.
And like, I love you could kill both of the Nexus towers at the same time.
Yeah, and so like battle mages, we'll kind of go on to that one, and also kind of side note to the new mage update. I mean, a lot of the battle mages are really affected here, and I really like this distinction. Though, like a battle mage, they're getting in the middle of a fray and they're wreaking havoc. Is what they say. So they're a shorter range mage usually. They don't do like stupid amounts of like combo damage like a burst mage does, but they're just going to get in the middle and they're just going to start doing tons of damage, and they become this force to be reckoned with. Like, you have to deal with them or you have to get away from them.
The examples they use, by the way, are Karthus and Vladimir, and you can see how they get right into the middle of the team and do a big chunk of AoE damage.
Right, it's all about getting into the middle and affecting the fight over the whole course of the fight. Like a marksman does, they output a consistent amount of damage throughout the whole fight. Very similar with like battle mages, like Karthus and Vladimir and Swain. Those types that really rely on honestly getting tanky into those fights and lasting as long as they can.
Now, here's where we get to like controllers, and controllers are really, really interesting class, kind of like it. So controllers, what they say are that they're defensive casters that oversee the battlefield by protecting and opening up opportunities for their allies. So like they split into two subclasses, which are enchanters and disruptors. And mind you, like these champs, most of these champs can be played in multiple roles. Like they can all be played as supports, but they can also be played usually like mid or top lane. So enchanters, for example, they have Janna and Lulu. And it says what they describe it, and the reason I want to break this down kind of like this is because there's kind of weird descriptions, but it makes sense. So enchanters focus on amplifying their allies' effectiveness by directly augmenting them and defending them from incoming threats.
It's sometimes like if you've ever heard the term utility mage and you see someone like Lulu or Janna, that's like a lot of supports, especially like that's kind of like what an enchanter is.
Yeah.
It's really like I like that last part, like meaning they really only shine when grouped together with others.
Yeah. Like they really rely on others.
Mm-hmm.
You usually don't see a Janna like off in top lane like 1v3ing people.
Not anymore.
Yeah. Or even, I mean, yeah, there was a time that Lulu did, but like Lulu still like she's not gonna solo carry a game usually. She needs to support other people.
Basically for her ultimate.
Yeah,
like
they might solo
defining key features of a champion that really are for the team.
They might solo carry a team fight by like completely shutting down the enemy divers and like, you know, ulting a carry or like monsooning people away and like pretty much turning the tide of a fight.
Yeah, and then they have disruptors, and I once again I want to read most of their description because it makes sense. So we initially wanted to call this subclass control mages, but realized that this could be expanded to the entire group, that and utility mage wasn't a very good class name. Disruptors specialize in locking down opponents, or in some cases entire battlefields, by creating intense zones of threats that only foolish enemies would dare wade through. Although not as reliant on their friends as enchanters, the fragile and immobile disruptors greatly benefit from allied presence, both to deter incoming danger and to help capitalize on targets they've locked down. And they give the examples of Zyra and Anivia. What do you guys think about this one?
I think Anivia is a perfect example. Like she literally creates giant like circles of damage and slows and walls people off. Like she completely controls an area and makes it like, as they put it, a zone of threat.
Every single time I've been walled into Baron Pit by an Anivia and think, wow, this is really disrupting. I'm disrupted by this.
I'm totally disrupted now, bro.
Bro, I'm so
Why you disrupted me?
Bro.
Disrupting the peace, bro. I like how it's distinguished from the Vanguards too. Because like all these champions can initiate fights, but they really are the strongest when they are creating zones of pressure within those fights.
They work best in like tight spots, like if there's a skirmish that happens in the jungle or something like that. I would like classify these as like EU mages or as like fanatic mages, because they're like you know, they're the skirmishing type of mages. They in a small situation where you're coming into them, they're gonna be the biggest threat, you know, where they can set up an area and it's either you have to be able to get past that area and kill them, or you need to get the hell out of that area before they kill you.
I think Haber hit like the thing I wanted to touch on, which is like places like the Baron Pit, where you have like a defined area where a fight may happen. That's where these people really excel, as opposed to like running around the map and like trying to like Zyra root people. Like if you actually get a big fight in the Baron Pit, or like the enemy team starts Baron and then you catch them, that's where these champions are particularly scary.
Yeah, in tight scenarios, I agree. I was trying to think of other champions that might be like categorized in this specific category.
Like as a disruptor?
Yeah, as a disruptor. Like that would be
Azir with his ultimate.
More, yeah, I was just thinking of like more quintessential disruptors, and I'd agree Azir. I kind of am leaning towards Vel'Koz as well, just because he's also really good at controlling a specific area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Vel'Koz would actually be a good classification of a disruptor. I think like I think that another disruptor might well, no, I guess that wouldn't be it, because see the hard thing about this class is that a lot of people might get confused between like a disruptor and maybe a battle mage, because they're very similar, but I think it really, the biggest difference is crowd control.
I would include
disruptors
Orianna.
have tons of crowd control.
Yeah, I was thinking Oriana too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I'd
don't
say
know exactly
Orianna.
where to place her. I was thinking about that earlier when we were talking about like enchanters as well. Like you have the shield and
Nope.
the disruption there, but it really doesn't fit as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I think as a disruptor, I mean, and it's the same sort of thing. You put her in a tight area, and she throws her ult down, and it's GG, a good ult, and she can just completely wreck a fight. So
Get that 3,000
and then-
elo ult.
yep, and then we'll go on to marksman.
Oh,
All right,
boy.
so next in the show. All right. I know this is the one a lot of people are going to have an issue with, and it's basically they just put marksman. End of story. Now, I personally feel like there are subclasses of marksman. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like
Right.
I would say, so personally, so let's each kind of say what we think ours would be. My personally would be snipers and casters. So like a sniper is someone who's going to lay down damage from range. They're mainly auto attack focused. Well, actually, you could probably split into like 3 classes. So like snipers, casters, and then I would say maybe like duelists. So like a caster would be like a caster ADC, like a Corki, a Lucian, and Ezreal. A sniper would be someone who just wants to siege from the back line with auto attacks as far out of the fight as possible, while still being able to lay down auto attacks like a Caitlyn. And then I would say that a duelist would be someone who they have the potential to like 1v1 someone. They're gonna kind of skirt around the edges of the fight, and they're gonna pick off targets of opportunity. So I'd say that'd be like a Vayne or a
Quinn.
Quinn. So what do you guys think?
I actually really kind of agree with that, Doom. That's
Thank
those are. I mean, there's
Yeah.
certain other things I'd focus on, but like those are the main ones.
Yeah, like
Go ahead.
I just feel like as a marksman main, I got totally left out here. Like, Riot's like, nah, you guys just do damage. That's it. But like, you look at all the different ways that marksmen function within the game right now. They fall into 3 different lanes. Like, you can have a marksman in the bottom lane, in the mid lane, and in the jungle, all in the same
And
game.
Or you could be
better
like
believe they're not
Immortals
all
and
doing the
play.
same fucking role, and then lose the fucking tree. Yeah.
Yeah, or you could be like Immortals and play it in 3 lanes and lose.
But like that's the
you
thing.
know.
Like, marksmen, these range people really have a lot of different things they can do. So it really doesn't do justice just to lump them in saying these guys do as much damage as they can around the
Yeah.
edges of the fights. There's a lot of different ways they do damage, and there's more they bring to the table.
I I think that marksmen should be identified specifically with the objectives that the marksmen need to accomplish, because that's kind of what the general kind of idea is with each class. And I think
True.
that they did a really good job avoiding that initially. So maybe we'll get a better idea of what they're going to introduce later on. Because I feel like marksmen are very specific with the things that they need to perform in a game. Like some marksmen are going to be very objective based. They're going to avoid fighting almost entirely because they just want to take towers. While other people are like, they need to fight because that's all they're good at. Like you got to just continuously fight. And then some marksmen are better in the late game, and there's a lot of uniqueness to just the marksman role. So, I mean, personally, I categorize marksmen into 2 different roles, objective takers and then just straight out damage dealers. And damage dealers can take objectives. However, they're better more frequently used in just like straight up pushing. And you just want to push for days. And then objective takers they can push, but they're also going to be taking turrets and dragons and buffs and moving around the map more. And that's personally how I categorize marksmen. I don't look at what each one does, because an Ezreal can play very like pushy, and he can go like down like to inner turret and get the fuck out of there by being collapsed on by like 4 people, totally fine. Like he can do that, and that's totally great. He can also roam around the map and do everything and like go every which way. Quinn can also do that. Like Callista can also do that. A lot of champions have that mobility. They have that pushing power. So it's very specific as to what your objective is. And I mean that's kind of what I was getting at the beginning of this conversation when I said that the classes are supposed to identify what your job is in the match, in the specific match.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that marksmen, they get more abundant with subclasses, because I agree. I don't necessarily know you can fit them in just 2.
It's not, because like I know they said before, like you take a champion like Varus, he is a marksman first of all, but he also fits into like artillery mage and is disruptor as well. But
but what's his objective? Like
right.
that's kind of the whole point, is like, what is he trying to do in a specific fight?
Yeah,
or in a specific game, not a fight, in a specific game.
And I think though, like kind of rounding back to what we said at the beginning of this, is that it's not necessarily cut and dry how they're always going to be played and stuff, but it just gives you a good idea of how they're generally played. So, how about you guys want to move into some questions here? I think we got time to do like 1 or 2.
I'll keep my salt for that for right now.
I don't think you should be salty, Haber. I think there's a lot of potential for the classes.
Like I said, I feel like I got left out.
They said
I don't though. I think that they're actually paying special attention to marksmen and being very specific with what they're going to do. And to avoid any further confrontation, they're just going to avoid adding anything until they're like, okay, this is how we want to define it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they said in
first.
the blog that this could even change. This, can and will change down the line.
Absolutely.
So, it's not concrete or set in stone or anything like that. So, don't be surprised if marksmen get subclass too. So
they're being
really
deliberate.
Yeah. Okay, so listener question here from Dage. I want to say that's a typo for Doge. But anyways, hi guys. Recently I have been finding myself standing on top of teammates quite often. Either I try to walk to the side or away to dodge something and I catch them and get hit with a skill shot, or we get engaged on by Annie or Malphite. I tried to actively stay away from my teammates in game, but it feels like there's always something that causes my ally to turn right next to me. Is this something that's my fault or my allies? Is there anything I can do to help prevent this in the future beyond just trying to be spaced from teammates and have that be my priority?
It's funny.
Hold on, but we should read that last line too, because I think
Oh, okay.
The issue is almost solely when I play AD carry, and it feels like my support is walking on top of me during the entire laning phase. Any help with this would be great. Doge.
The reason I think it's funny is because honestly, that's kind of how Zone of Circles work, and you got to be relatively close to each other. But at the same time, if your support's on top of you, literally on top of you, then yeah, that's not okay. But as far as being close to your co-part or your co-laner, I mean, you should be within auto attack range of your partner almost at any given time.
The more I think about it, I remember this being more of a problem when I started. You had those scared supports that really didn't play all that much, and the only way they felt safe is if they were basically literally holding your hand in lane.
Which is funny because they're supposed to protect you, the ADC.
But it's a role that they're probably not that comfortable with, so if they stay as close as they can, they figure there's a less chance of me getting caught out and screwing this up. But, doing that, you lose so much pressure in lane, you end up screwing yourself anyways.
Mm-hmm. The first thing I thought when I read this question is, what elo are you in? Where are you? And my guess, and I'm sorry, not trying to down talk here or anything like that, but the first thing I thought was that you're probably in mid to low bronze. And the reason is because one of the biggest issues in lower elos is positioning. And I feel like from what you're saying, it probably is a mixture of both you and your lane partner. It's probably a mixture of both poor positioning on both your parts. It could be that you're really far forward, and because you're so far forward, your support is like, oh crap, I need to stay like right on top of them so that if someone jumps on them, I can take the fall instead of them and protect them or save them. Whereas maybe if you played back even a little bit, they would feel a little more comfortable to give you space.
Yeah, I don't want to stick. Hold on, I don't want to stick the reader in any particular elo if they haven't mentioned it. But I do think that positioning is a huge thing, and some champions move faster than others. So like if you're retreating from what you think might be like an Annie or a Malphite engage, like if some champions are moving faster than others, or you turn around slower, like you might bunch up like by accident, like that. I've seen that happen. But I think Asdorician got on a really big point that a lot of people don't know about bot lane in particular, is that ideally you should in a lot of cases be kind of in line with your support, and you should have like a similar like overlapping zone of influence, so that way the enemy can't engage on one of you without the other person retaliating.
Right.
Yes.
It's just finding like a balance between that and literally holding hands in lane. I've before I've had to say, dude, back off.
Yeah.
You're way too close.
If your teammate is just standing on top of you, shit. I mean, you could try walking away from him, but if he keeps following you, then honestly, tell him to back off and leave you. And I mean, explain why. Don't say, dude, can you stop following me? Say, hey, I need you to ease off of me because I need to be able to dodge skill shots, and we're losing pressure on brush side of the lane. Do you mind chilling a little closer on the inside of the lane? And oftentimes the support will take that perfectly fine.
I mean, you could try instead of pinging them
off,
try and try pinging more to where you think they should be. Because I really think it is part of it. Like, they're not confident in what they're supposed to be doing. So if they see, that person kind of knows where I should be doing right now, I think they'd listen more.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So I mean, I guess TLDR is just watch your positioning and make sure you're not positioning yourself too far forward. But at the same time, like if it's if you really feel it's something with them, don't be afraid to ping or say something.
And try and be predictive. Like if there's any Malphite engage that might come up, like if you're playing an AD carry, try and stand behind people. Like try and predict where your teammates and where your opponents are going to engage from, and like the more you think ahead of time, the easier it is to be in the right spot.
Yeah.
True.
So let's hop into the next one. Hey guys, first I want to say good luck to Asdorician in your job. As a fellow Lux main, I'll definitely miss you and everything Lux and non-Lux you bring to the podcast. So for my main question, a problem I have with understanding League is the math and item stats. My biggest issue is when I'm playing tank or bruiser champs, I find it hard to know when to prioritize armor, MR versus HP, and when one is worth more than the other. Similarly, I don't understand the math of how losing only 10 damage off an ability is a nerf and is really hacked when we are talking about HP numbers to the thousands. Thanks in advance, Dan.
So I think we should focus a little more on the second question, because the first question was we definitely covered that last week.
Yeah,
that was, I think Grey White wrote in about that one.
Well,
yeah,
and
I mean, it's also.
I don't think we talked a whole lot about, especially like effective health in League of Legends, or in a lot of other games where resistances come into play. And effective health is really important to determine what's going to get you the most bang for your buck. And all it is really just calculating with the resistances you have. Let's say you have 100 armor. That will give you 50% damage reduction versus attacks. If you have 1,000 health, that basically means that you can take 2,000 points of physical damage. That's your effective health when it comes to dealing with physical damage. So finding a good balance, is getting more health going to increase my effective health more than getting more armor? And usually around like 150, 200, it really starts to break off more to getting more health is going to help you out more. Because there is sort of like a diminishing returns with armor.
Mm-hmm.
But
and
also
nowadays,
go ahead.
Nowadays there's a grand abundance of items that allow you to penetrate both armor um, and magic resist. However, there are fewer items in just dealing with sheer health. So if you're ever curious as to which one you should buy, just buy health because it's usually a safe bet as far as tanky stats go. I mean, honestly, you should understand how resistances work because in the grand scheme of things, they will mitigate more damage, but it's never a bad idea to just get more health.
You want to always look at too how your opponents are building, because if they're building items that give them armor penetration or give them magic penetration, you want to make sure that you're building the actual armor and magic resist and focusing on that early. Whereas if they're not really building those items early, getting some HP is good damage mitigation, period. And I mean, overall, it's best. I personally would say it's best to get HP in the earlier you are in the game, get HP, and as the game goes on, itemize your armor and MR specifically for what kind of damage they're putting out and if they're building armor or magic pack. So
definitely,
build
look
for
at
the
team
game
composition. Look at what the enemy team is going to do. Is there like an almost all attack damage team on the enemy team? Like in that case, like maybe opt for armor a bit more. If it's a lot of mix of like both physical and magic damage, maybe the health would be more effective health, as Haver mentioned.
Yeah, so now we can talk about the second part.
Yeah.
And
this is a good question. I like it.
I mean, the quick and easy answer to this is that you're only looking at the ability for the one instance that it does that 10 damage. You have to remember that if you nerf damage, like say they take 10 damage off of an ability starting at like level 3 or something because they don't like how heavy it scales into the late game. That means post level 3, which is going to be after 5 or after 7, I'm sorry. You're basically dealing less damage every time you use that ability. Now, 10 damage, every attack from thenceforward is in the thousands when you look at how much damage you're going to end up taking away by the time that you actually get to.
When we're really concerned more about that base damage is earlier on, when we're not talking about thousands of HP, it's more hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, think about someone like Vladimir, for instance, who like spams his Q, and then after he gets a few points in his Q, he's just like spamming his Q. Like, if you take off a little bit of damage from that ability, and it's up like every 4 seconds at max rank without CDR, like, that is going to add up to like a lot of damage that you're not doing to your opponent.
I mean, later on, that 10 damage in the base is going to be mitigated entirely by the ratios that go along with that. And there, you're right, it's not as big of a deal to lose 10 damage off an ability that is doing like 290 base damage plus a 0.7 ability power ratio. But early on, when you're taking away 10 damage from an ability that did 40 plus the 0.7, when you're not getting a whole lot out of your ability power, yet you're cutting that damage by 20% every shot.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, it really is. You need to look at it for the multiple uses that are going to occur because they are going to happen more often than just the ones. If you look at it for just the simple number and just that one instance, then it's really like, not that much.
Same thing with base attack speed changes. Those are really huge changes, but the numbers are never more than like 0.05 usually, and that's still a large change in the grand scheme of things that can lower the amount of overall attack speed by like 10 to 15% later on the game, because it stacks with everything else that you're getting for attack speed. You're losing out on that much too.
Yeah, base stats especially, because they can play into items that scale off of your base stats or like have interactions with your base stats. So a slight change in base stats could have a pretty big impact.
Yeah.
Also, you have to think of the ability and like how often the person is able to spam it, because if it's a ability that they can spam and you're taking like say, in your case, you say 10 damage. So say they take 10 base damage off an item that, or off an ability that you can spam every 2 to 3 seconds. That adds up pretty quick, I mean, over the course of 5 casts, that's 50 damage you're missing out on, not even including like amplification, of magic pen or ability power, whatever it scales off of. But that's a big deal over time. So you got to think of it that way too, in the aspect of how is the ability used and how often is it used, and is it maxed first, or like how are they using it in lane and things like that. So there's a lot that goes into it and why. So really and they kind of harkening back where we kind of talking about other podcasts in the beginning, listen to the Trinity Force podcast. I think that they do a really good job breaking that stuff down.
So, that was Dan. Thanks, Dan.
Yes. Do I have time for another, or is that? I think.
Yeah, we got time.
All right, cool. So, hey, Forwards, I'm a relatively new bronze player who enjoys the support role and is finding trouble climbing up the ladder as support. It's easy to feel like what you do in game isn't relevant. There are games where I feel like I can play very well controlling lane, blah, 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 and still lose because I clearly can't carry. I've come up with a few tactics which I use and they've helped me, but I know they aren't the correct way to play, quote unquote. For instance, many games I forget my ADC and I just tag along with whoever's most fed, and it's just them. Sometimes this means splitting with the whole team to go ahead and offer support to the top laner who absolutely refused to group. And I know that if he dies, we'll lose game. Other times when playing an AP champ, it means skipping Sightstone entirely, building damage, because every other single champion is in our team is building AD, and there's like a Rammus on the opponent's team. Sometimes if I'm the only AP damage source, I'll go big and farm that wave at top that nobody seems to notice. I guess there's 2 parts of the question. So first, what other tips can you give me to affect the outcome of the games I play as support? And second, what if the things that make me win more games are mostly an incorrect way of playing, such as the things I listed? Thanks, keep the good work. Who was that from? I didn't say.
I really like that he said that he doesn't necessarily get Sightstone early if he's playing an AP champion. That makes me happy.
It's fine.
It's great. It's perfect. That's what you're supposed to do. Get control early and then get early damage.
Say it's what you're supposed to do. Get your
Sightstone. That's what you're supposed to do.
I'm going to say, you still should get the Sightstone, though.
No, you don't need the Sightstone before level. You don't need the Sightstone before minute 10. If you're playing an AP mage...
Unless you're already dominating in lane, your base damage is well enough to still keep snowballing the lane, so why not get the extra health and the Sightstone early when you can?
Yeah,
but
I've had this argument a bunch of times, right, and it's the same roundabout excuse. It makes you, it allows you to do something that you don't need to do. If you have control of the lane and you have the single ward in a good position to where it prevents the jungler from getting ganks and they can't do anything in the actual lane, then it really doesn't matter if you don't have a Sightstone or not. And you don't need the health. You're controlling the lane.
But for the money spent, you'd be getting a blasting wand.
No, the money spent you could spend on more AP and further push the lane in your favor.
A blasting wand versus a whole Sightstone.
Why just a blasting wand? Why not a forbidden idol, which gives you decent cooldown reduction? I'm thinking of a bunch of other things that I could build rather than just the blasting wand.
Too. You get plenty out of that, I agree.
You can get a lot out of not buying Sightstone. Besides the point, we could talk about this forever. I think it's great. You're doing a good job. Keep it up when you're playing AP Mages.
I'm gonna say it's situational at best. I won't dismiss the not buy I won't say rush Sightstone every game, especially on an AP Mage. But I would say that Sightstone is really important, and Vision is unbelievably important in the support role. And I think when people play support, in lower levels, they're I need to hard carry, and then they build pure AP, and then just get caught out on objectives constantly.
If you know where the team is, you don't need wards all the time. If you know where the team is, you don't need wards all the time. It's really straightforward.
I don't know. I kind of agree with both you guys, and But I think it really comes down to play the game that you're in. Don't follow the same item build every game because you feel like that's the support item build. So,
to the core of it.
Yeah, so just really focus on that, and I think we've talked about this before, that as a support, it doesn't mean that you're a marksman babysitter. It means that you support your team. So I think that you roaming and helping other lanes and stuff, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. In fact, I think that's a great thing that too many lower elo players don't do.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, I'll go. So you point out in your email that you say sometimes I forget my ADC and I tag along with who's most fed. In a lot of cases, really, that is one of the smartest things you can do on a support. Like, you got a fed Cassiopeia in mid, and that she can carry the game. Like, help her do whatever she needs to do to make sure she carries that game. Just carry the game by giving her all the tools she needs to win. Like, I can totally see that. So one thing I do want to point out, because I think sometimes people carry this too far, like if you've got a Tryndamere who's fed, his win condition isn't necessarily to just be in a mid lane shuffle siege. He might be better off with you making sure that your team doesn't die in the 4-person situation in mid. So you running up to top lane, even if he's the most fed, might not be the best idea. But in general, I think you've got the right mindset. Play to what your team's strengths are and your team's win conditions, and it's not always your AD carry that's failing.
Yeah. Hey, you also need to identify that there's going to be, with the scenario Frost specifically just brought up, where you are leaving a lane to go to the top lane. Well, when you're going to the longest lane to help out a teammate, which is fine, that's totally great. However, it sets up the rest of the team for failure. Well, maybe not failure, but it puts them in a precarious position because they're without another teammate. And yes, the top laner may be the quintessential factor in all of this, but sometimes you just need to trust the guy and know that you need to back up the rest of your team, because he up there by himself, there's not a whole lot you can do when there are other more important things on the other side of the map that are collaboratively pressing, and you need to deal with it. Just because he's the most fed and keeping him alive is the biggest job, well, you have other jobs you need to deal with as well.
Yeah. You talk about things you can do to make you win more games that are incorrect. Especially bronze and stuff like that. I would definitely say playing AP mages that do have some utility in the bot lane. Brand, Karma, Vel'Koz.
Lux is great now. Her shield is getting buffed. It's really good.
But putting more damage into that lane, a lot of people don't know how to really deal with that. So you just end up poking them out and killing them over and over again. And you can become that secondary mage for your team and end up carrying the game. That really does work a lot early on.
It's one of these things where whenever you get the question from any role, how do I carry more? How do I win more games, etc.? How do I affect the outcomes of the game? There are several factors that play into it, and in a general level, it's hard for me to say if you don't say what champion you're playing, what's the matchup, what's their team composition, etc. So that's why we did those episodes way back when on win conditions. But if you think about, going to Haber's point, you're playing someone like Brand support. You want to control the laning phase with your oppressive poke. You want to carry team fights by being an additional source of damage. And as a support in general, super undervalued is just vision control. Controlling, getting wards out on objectives, denying vision, setting up plays for your team. All these things, if you do them well, you will carry games.
And pressure. As an AP mage, you're if you're playing a second AP, basically, furthering your damage, you need to do what you do best. You need to do what you built for, and that's to do damage. If you're just wandering around the map, warding or maybe looking for picks, you're not going to be doing what you built to do. You're actually ignoring the exact thing that you're meant to do. So a good tactic for if you're going those heavy damage dealers, get those safe wards down so that you can watch your ass, but then push as hard as you goddamn can. and then get out, move to another lane, push even harder. Like this is that like 6 to 12 area where you've already taken the turret and now you're just looking for objectives on the other side of the map. Normally, as a support, you'd let your ADC farm while you went and roamed and set up wards in different places. But as a mage, you need to not be leaving, and you need to be just pushing as hard as you can while staying safe. And maybe finding picks so that you can create opportunities for your jungler on other aspects of the map, so they don't have to worry about bot lane whatsoever.
I don't want to limit this to just mages either. Like, we use that because sometimes people think, in bronze you can only play the high damage style supports. Whether you're playing someone like Janna or you're playing a different type of support that's all about engage, like Alistar, like, recognize what your champion is about and recognize how you can be impactful for your team. Do you need to be as we talked about the roles before, do you need to be the Vanguard? Do you need to be the controller? That's how you'll be successful. Play to your champion's strengths and recognize what your team's win condition is.
And you're always going to need to... One last thing I want to say, though. You need to identify which one is the more pressing objective for you. Because oftentimes you'll think, man, I really need to get a ward down on Dragon. And I probably, you need to get a ward down on Dragon before you leave. However, maybe that's not the thing you need to do right now. Maybe you should do something before you ward Dragon. And my point is leading to, like, know what objectives you need to do, like within the next 5 minutes or so, like what you need to accomplish. But then to go like beyond that, know which one needs to be done first. Because I can guarantee you're probably not prioritizing the things in the right order.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
You have the right ideas, clearly, because we're agreeing with a lot of the things that you're saying, but you're not doing it in the right moments. And that's probably where you're finding those losses.
Maybe you're getting vision around Dragon, but they've already about to start Dragon. Maybe if you had the vision at all the entrances a minute ago and had backed and got wards, and then were grouped with your team, that might have been a way easier Dragon.
Yeah.
And remember about your team. I mean, maybe they're just too demanding, and maybe they're never satisfied. But why do we scream at each other? Because this is what it sounds like when the doves cry. Do, 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 do.
Oh, thank you, Doom. This has been the Four Awards podcast. Everyone go out and buy a Prince album. We'll see you next week.
Later,
guys.
Bye.